Well, welcome everyone. My name's Aidan and welcome to this podcast. I have with me a dear friend, Silouan Hartley. We've known each other 24 years.
Oh, but yeah, a bit
20,
more. Yeah,
25?
25, 26, something like that. Yeah.
And we'll talk a bit about Silouan's life. Silouan is a really skilled cabinet maker and he does a lot of the church furnishings, which I design. I used to do my own woodwork, but God sent Silouan along, so now I get him to make the work, and also he makes my icon panels. But Silouan's had an interesting journey. He became Orthodox 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Before that, you've been a really strong believer, hadn't you?
Yeah, as a Christian, yeah.
That's right, yeah. So I wanted to talk with Silouan today about, among other things, the sacredness of work. I mean, I make figurative work, and it's obviously sacred because we're depicting saints in Christ. But Silouan makes furnishings to a really high standard. He, like Blessed Joseph, is a carpenter, but a cabinet maker. I don't even know the distinction between a cabinet maker who might do things like dovetailing joints and furnishings, and then a builder, though you've done building as well. But I want to talk about how he feels making things with craft is part of prayer. So my first question is, do you feel that making something with love is like prayer? I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I know it's an important part of your spiritual life, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there is a relationship between my work, my hands, which are a blessed gift, and what I've been able to do with those hands over the years. And certainly I feel that prayer is a part of the day that starts off the craft and the work of craft. And that's particularly important in doing the icon boards. But it is too when you're making a piece of furniture, a piece of oak. It's very, it's a constant reminder, the skill you've got in your hand, which is given to you. It's a blessing. And it's not something that, I to a certain extent, it gets better over time because you practice your skill. But the start is very definitely a gift from God. Yeah.
So tell us a bit about how it started.
Well, I went to a secondary modern school by default, really. I was the first boy in the country not to take the 11 plus, and then my dad moved me to a place where they did take it, and I ended up, because I hadn't taken it, in a secondary modern school. And but it quickly became clear to me that craft was something I was really good at. I excelled at metalwork, woodwork and technical drawing, geometric and engineering drawing they called it in those days. And I had a really good teacher, a Christian man. It was through him that I became a Christian at about 15, 16 years old. And he took a great interest in me, and he developed and nurtured my skills. And when it came to the end of my fifth year, my O-level year, as it was in those days, he said, "Why don't you stay on and do an A-level in woodwork?" And I thought, well, surely you have to do another kind of A-level like English, and I wasn't particularly interested in that, but he cleared the way for me to do 2 years of woodwork with him. And I built a beautiful cabinet in Japanese oak with cedar of Lebanon lining. It was and mahogany drawer sides. It was about 5 feet high and 4 feet wide, a gentleman's wardrobe in the arts and crafts style. And really, it was 2 wonderful years that I knew what I was going to do after that. But my father was quite keen that I had a job with a pension and all those kinds of things, and I wasn't going to get that in being a woodworker. So Peter, my woodwork teacher, said to me, "Well, why don't you go to Shoreditch College in London?" That's where I went and trained as a woodwork teacher. And of course, I tried to get in, but I couldn't really get in because I didn't have O-level maths and I didn't have O-level English. But Peter persuaded them that I was really good, and they gave me a year to retake my maths and English. So I was sent to Colchester to my uncle's, and he, under the whip, and I had a job during the day sharpening chisels in 3 schools, and chisels and planes. So I did about 150 chisels and planes a week. So I learnt to sharpen. But I also passed my English and maths, which was important. So I went to Shoreditch and trained there. It was wonderful. It was Craft College it's actually near Windsor. It's not in Shoreditch anymore. It moved out. And working with other craftsmen and other people who have gone on to some to teach and some to do great things was a great experience. And I then went off and I did teach for 15 years, and I really enjoyed my teaching, but eventually they stopped making things with wood, and they started doing a lot more paperwork, and that side of it was less interesting to me. So I thought the best thing to do was set up a little woodworking business, and I guess that was about 1982, something like that. So
Nice, amazing.
we've been doing that since.
I was talking to someone the other day about how in the Bible the words wisdom and craft often go hand in hand, and I've noticed talking with a lot of craftspeople, there's a certain, even if they think they're atheists, there's a real wisdom about many of them, and I've often thought, is it because you've got to humble yourself before the material in a way, don't you? You've got to listen to the material, like working oak is very different, isn't it, from work with tulip or
Honduras mahogany or something.
Or whatever, exactly, yeah. So there's a sort of humility. If you force something on a material that's not meant to, it kicks back, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
On the other hand, you're a master of the material, so you make it into something that's greater than it is. It's a form of transfiguration, but it's not sort of lordship. It's just sort of. Can you talk a bit about how you find that experience of working with different mediums, etc., and what you've learned from that, and how that's enriched your spiritual life?
Well, I think most of my work with you has been with European oak, sometimes English oak. And oak's a very beautiful wood because it's majestic. The tree is majestic, and the tree is so much a part of our cultural history. Of course, the tree is an important part of creation, so there is always something special for me about using an oak tree and seeing it cut. And I have had an occasion where it's been cut and sawn and planked and air dried and then used. And that's a wonderful experience. You don't get that very often.
You've done it right from the whole thing, right?
Yeah, and that's really nice when you select a tree, and it's cut and then it's dried, a year per inch of thickness and plus a year, and so you have to wait. You have to be patient. And then in this case, we made a table, and you know that the table, when it's crafted, and there's a relationship between you and the wood and you and creation. You know when it's crafted that it's going to be around for a long time. It's not something that is going to be used for 30 or 40 years and then discarded. Most furniture, if it's properly made, will go on to be around for 200-300 years, possibly more. So, yeah.
And do you think that if something's made with love, it sort of gives off love? You know, if you get something from a factory that's been churned out, I don't know. For me, it doesn't feed my soul, but something which has been made with craft, or even a bit. Yeah, you see some folk furniture which is not made with high skilled craft, but it is sort of made with a sort of love.
Yeah,
in a
that's
way.
Right. Yeah, when you see the workers working in the greenwood workers working in the forest, and they've got their pole lathe, you can feel the relationship between the craftsperson and the wood and the piece that's being made, and it's very easy to see it when you're in the woods. Yes. It's not so easy to see it in a modern workshop with a spindle moulder and a planer thicknesser and a saw, because it's a bit more clinical. But you certainly feel it when you go into the woods and see these people working. There's a very special relationship between those people and the wood, the craft. But having said that, when the wood is prepared, it's planed and shaped and so on, when it goes onto the bench, you have that opportunity back to be in love with the wood, to feel something special. And each joint that's cut, especially when you're using a traditional joint, a mortise and tenon or a dovetail or a lap dovetail, or a secret mitered dovetail is an incredible thing. On my first cabinet, both corners of the top of the cabinet, they were about 20 inches deep. And they were all secret mitered dovetails, which took me about 4 months to make. And you glue them together, and there's nothing to see. It all disappears. All the work's gone. Yeah. And but you know that's where the love is. Yeah. You can see it in the corner of the cabinet.
See it.
And it's in my bedroom. Here it is, 50 years. What is it? 52 years later. That cabinet has my clothes in it, and I dress myself from it. And I often look at the corners, and I know how much work went into the corner. And but I mean, one of the issues today is that corners like that cost money. Yeah. They take a lot of time. Yeah. So craftspeople have to use different methods of jointing cabinets to make it a viable commission.
One thing I've been thinking of and talking with various people about is the possibility of introducing to this country what they've had in Japan since about 1950, which is a living national treasure. We're very good at treasuring buildings, but not so much in this country treasuring the people who make those highly skilled objects.
Yes.
And in Japan, they established the system where the most admired cabinet maker would be made a national treasure, and in Japan actually given like a pension all their lives until they die, of about 11,000 a year. But it's a way of the country through the government honouring the beauty of craft, and I'm seeing if we can reintroduce it into this country. In a sense, the guilds, I suppose, had that in the old days, like a masterman.
Yes.
With someone who had done his master cabinet, whatever, and then he had the honour of being a master, because he had gone through the apprenticeship. So, what you're saying about how we don't see these drawings, but in Japan, those things are really treasured and really honoured. That skill, and not perfection, but often imperfection is honoured, isn't it? Like the wonky pots are highly valued rather than just mechanically.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and of course the skill of the craftsman is when things don't quite go right, is making sure the piece isn't burnt or scrapped, but moved on in some way by a correction, and it takes a lot. That's what takes a lot of years, knowing how to get out of a bit of a mess. Not a complete mess, but it might be something that you didn't quite want to be like that, and that takes a bit of experience. But it's important because the thing doesn't want to be scrapped; it wants to be nurtured and taken on. I think this proposed Japanese craftsperson, esteeming the person, it's very difficult in our culture because we're very materialist, and really what's honoured in our culture is money, banking, insurance, things like that. I have that in my own family. My son will earn more in a year than I've earned in 25 years, and as a craftsman my wage is very low, because we're not esteemed. We're not paid generally what we should be paid, and even though I've done 52 years of work, I've probably only earned slightly below an average salary all my life.
But I wonder if in some countries it's not like this. Like in Germany, I think they really do honour high craftsmanship. Someone who's a great engineer would be considered on the same level as someone with a doctorate or something like that. Yeah, that's right. So I think it's a pretty British thing, and only fairly recently the demise perhaps of the technical colleges. I don't want to get too much into this area, but I think it does reflect a shift from real quality and real wealth, which is ultimately love of God, but also a quality of life. Like, in a sense, you're richer than someone who earns 10 times as much, but just doesn't like their job because you love your job. So I think when a culture loses sight of the quality of life and concentrates on the quantity of wealth, how much money you earn, things have gone quite unhealthy.
Yes.
Haven't they?
Yeah, I think so. I think I wouldn't swap my life.
No.
I would want to journey through the craft again. It's been a wonderful thing, and I sold the big business last year, or the bigger business, and the bigger workshop, and I had 6 months off, and I thought, that's it, I've done 52 years, it's time to read books or listen to music or whatever it was. But after 6 months I realised I started making things for my children, helping them with their projects, their building projects, but of course they were going to come to an end. So I thought, the garden shed, we've got to make it into a little workshop. And I feel quite happy now and quite relaxed about the fact that I'll probably keep on working with my hands until I die. I don't see any reason for stopping that. My hands still work. I'm still blessed with great hands. I'm still able to think and to design, and although you do most of the design, occasionally somebody asks me to design something, I'm not very good at it unless it has straight lines. I'm not very good with curves. But no, I think I think that makes it feel worthwhile as a life skill, because you don't want to stop it. You want to keep going. And I know you're the same. We're the same age, but you're going to keep going.
Yeah, I just want to go till I die if I can.
Yeah, that's it.
You probably don't mind us talking a bit about your bipolar. You've been bipolar, and I think It's quite unusual, if I understand correctly, that someone suffering from bipolar works all their life.
Yes.
Is that unusual?
Well,
But I know that your manual work, and you're very intelligent, and your intelligence is sort of embodied, particularly in things you make. Could you talk a bit about how this has helped you go through being a bipolar and live a more or less normal life? And you have medication, I know, but my guess is that working with your hands and being self-employed has been a major part of your life.
The woodwork is a therapy. It's and I know during this time I had off last year, my mental health became distressing, and the psychiatrist and the community, the psychiatric social nurse, CPN, community psychiatric nurse, she particularly said, I think you should do your woodwork again, because it's fairly obvious. Anything where you're occupying your hands and your mind is going to help with mental health. Yeah. And I think there are two elements to my bipolar, as it's bipolar. There's the mania, where a lot of things happen, and I create businesses. I've had 17 businesses and my teaching. And you create them. They're a bit like card houses. You can build them skillfully, but they inevitably fall down. They go into collapse. And so life is a bit like that. You've got the cycle of mania, and then you've got a period of maybe being okay, and then you crash into this depression. But in the depression, I've never had to feel too much despair, because I work with my hands. I know that I'll be able again to make something else. And that's always been really important to me. The things that have kept me from taking my own life have been my children and my craft skill. I love it. And Virginia Woolf said it's only in the dives underground that you can come out and see the full colour of life. So now I've learned that in the darkness, in the depression, there is an opportunity to come out and be that craftsman again in the light.
It struck me that St. Irenaeus, a saint of the early centuries who lived in Lyon in France but was from Greece, he was really emphatic that we're in God's image, not just as spiritual beings, but as bodily beings. The body is just so important, and he was emphatic that we need to know God as embodied beings. And Father Barnabas, I was a novice monk for a while, as you know. Father Barnabas used to say, if you want to know God, you must first put your roots down on the earth, know the earth. You can't fly into the air and be a Christian.
No.
You're a tree. No. Rooted in the earth. And I think it's led to a lot of psychological problems with young kids who just aren't being rooted in the earth. It's the virtual world that they're living in, and this is bad spiritually, I think, but also very bad psychologically. And perhaps all these health and safety concerns mean that hardly any kids learn woodwork skills. It was too dangerous to have a saw in your hand.
I know, that's right.
And that leads to all sorts of problems, I think, not only spiritually but psychologically.
I think the social media has made it so that certain types of work for young people are more important than others, and working with your hands is still less important. We've talked about that a few moments ago. But I have on a number of occasions in my life had an apprentice who's been gifted, and Lambert was my last one, and he's now working in New Zealand, and a great craftsman and a young man. But he just was naturally able to turn to a piece of wood, and he could see what he had to do. You could tell him what to do and he would do it because he knew, because he was in love with his work, and he could use his tools well.
And I'm interested, did he struggle with more abstract work at school, like mathematics and the abstract, or was he
Lambert? Yeah, I think he probably did.
He's I know that you said you really struggled with maths, but I've noticed watching you, I've known you going through businesses and costing, and you did brilliant with maths in that incarnate environment.
Yeah, it's a sort of maths.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a maths that gets driven by wanting to be successful, wanting to work. Yeah. So if I have to do it, I apply myself to it. Yeah. And I can remember the bipolar. We started a business in about 1985 in Newmarket, and I saw a young lad in the village, and I said to him, do you want to have a job? And he said, what are we going to do? And I said, we're going to start a joinery business in Newmarket. So we bought an old Volkswagen van, and we went from nothing, and 10 months later we were turning over, and this is 1985, £1 million in turnover. And we had 17 men on the bench, and we had 3 in the machine shop, and we were sending joinery down to the theatres and so on in London. We were quite near London, 60, 70 miles, so we could connect well with that market. But it's just that you're able to achieve these things, and the woodwork was beautiful that was going out. Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
I've forgotten what I was talking about then, but
Yeah, but how some people who struggle with things in the abstract actually find that mathematical ability, business ability, in a more concrete situation.
Yeah, because it is. It's not just. There's a process in growing a business which is to do with mathematics, accounts, and so on. And you've got to be careful to keep your cash flow and your balance sheets and everything else right. So you have to learn those things too as a business person in our profession. But my happiest days have been when I've been smaller.
Right.
And because if you get big, you get away from the bench.
Yeah.
You have to run the business. You have to go out and get work.
Yeah.
And I can remember in Newmarket, a man came in and Dominique on the desk. She said, "Dylan, there's a man to see you." She was French. "Dylan, there's a man to see you about a staircase." And I said, "Oh no, Dominique, send him away. I don't want to do another staircase. I'm sick of staircases." So she told him that we were a bit busy. And she came in the next day. She said, "I had a look at that man in Who's Who. He's a racehorse trainer in Newmarket." And I said, "Oh, get him on the phone." And we rang him up, and it ended up being a £30,000 limed oak staircase, not a £600 one, which was the normal. So that was fun.
Right.
Yeah.
These things happen. Yeah. That's wonderful. I've been more interested not just in painting panel icons, but in the whole physical liturgical art. Art is a very important part of Orthodox worship. It should be any Christian's worship because God has created us embodied beings, and it's very obvious that icons and frescoes are sacred and an important part of worship. But it struck me that the design of furnishings, an icon screen or choir desk or misericords, all this, they're such big things that they have a big impact on the aesthetics of worship and therefore how easy it is to worship in a place. Could you talk a bit about this? You've made some things for our church, Stasithia around the side. Could you talk a bit about the importance of good design and good craftsmanship to help liturgy and worship flow well?
Yes, well, I think if the iconostasis is there and the icons start to fill the iconostasis, this is the journey we had in the church in Shrewsbury, the Holy Fathers, then you start to fill around it. And it's the filling around it which somehow, it does two things. It takes up space and more people come, and then there's less space, but it also means that the church starts to look very beautiful. Mm-hmm. You have the lamp, which we made out of a sheet of brass. Do you remember in the garage?
Have you seen it with I put chains in now and another?
Oh, I haven't seen it recently. No, I have to have a look.
So it's growing.
And, I can remember filing it for hours, filing the shape out of a sheet of brass. But we did it for the love of the church, and then we went on and we made the misericords and we made the pew, and you and I made the gallery together. But the making, it pays a wage, but it also has, for me as a craftsman, so many happy memories of times. It wouldn't just be us, it would be us and the volunteers that came to the church and helped the church be what it is today. It's a very beautiful church with the frescoes and the icons and the screens and the furniture, and it's too small. It's too full of people now. It's going to have to get bigger. But it'll always be what it is, a beautiful church and used in some way.
But I think that physical beauty is one of the things that draws people. Over COVID, a lot of young people have joined our parish, and so I was very interested in what was the first thing that drew them. And a lot of them was just the physical beauty of the church. One guy came just in the evening services. As you know, we don't have electricity in the church, so all the lighting is from oil lamps. I just loved the evening services because of the ethos there. Then he started to come to day services and ask questions. But a lot of these people I spoke to said it was some element of beauty, and other heard chanting on the radio or CD, and they thought, well, where did that come from? So I think all the work you've done with so much love, even if it's a baluster or stair, if it's made with love and care, then it all adds to the sense of divine beauty which feeds
for the initial visitor.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the church in Shrewsbury has open days, isn't it? And people come in and they're taken by just the smell of the wood and the incense, and the beauty of the church, and it makes they want to come back and see what's going on. I think with young people, I'm now at the Russian church in Telford, and with Father Spiridon, and we see a lot of young people coming too. And I think there is a dissatisfaction with what's on offer materially. I'm not talking about other churches. I'm just talking about the life seems to be empty. And we get these guys coming from Wolverhampton and Birmingham, and they look like, you would never ever look at them and think that guy's going to get converted. He's going to be a Christian. They look so, and yet something happens when they come. And they take part in the liturgy, and they come back. Right. And these guys are so, they look like knife carriers, and but they turn into these little gentle people, and they're so committed. And we have a WhatsApp group, and you get stuff coming through from Stephen, and they just want to send stuff. They're so hungry for it. They want to find stuff, and if it's a Saints' Day and it interests them particularly, they'll send lots of information through it. It feeds the rest of us who have got a bit lazy and looking for stuff. But the young people, they're great.
Yeah, everyone's made in the image of God, aren't they? And truth and goodness is actually natural, regardless of all the crusts we put around ourselves through our previous bad deeds. Still inside, these young men are made in God's image, and if they experience truth and goodness and love and beauty, think, yeah, that's what I've been looking for all my life.
Yeah.
So I don't think people need to be convinced of anything. They just need to see and smell holiness, and I thought, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about our church, is it's full of families and young people and older people, and we don't need to have a crash or whatever it is. They just come for this beauty to share in what's going on for an hour. Well, it's a long time. Yeah. It's not an hour, it's usually a couple of hours, and then there's a cup of coffee and a chat. Yeah. So you build up a relationship in the community, but they come and they stand and they love it. I remember I'd been into progressive rock music all my life, and one early track from Genesis, Peter Gabriel, there's a line in it where he says, "You can always trust a man who works with his hands. You look into his eyes, you know he understands."
Wow.
And it's always stayed with me. And that's with young people, you see it. You see the workers, they come and they just have a sparkle, something going on in their life. And of course, in mental health, I've spent time in mental hospitals, and looking into somebody's eyes is really important. And you can see that there's life there, or you can see that there's not much hope. There's some sadness there. And the team of people looking after them are doing their best to bring these people back, to have a sparkle back in their eyes.
I knew a lady some years ago whose horrible job was to decide which children in Romania they could help. This is after the fall of communism, and they discovered these really ghastly homes where kids were just left, really. And she said, I'd love to take them all in and help them and have them adopted out, but there weren't enough people to adopt them. So I had to decide, and I looked at their eyes, and some you knew there was enough of a flame there to kindle. Others,
I know it's
a possibility, but
it's something really.
Well, dear Lillian, I think we need to finish now. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Your craftsmanship and your spiritual life, how they come together, and then we'll tie up.
I think just to conclude, there is a joy in each day in going through the prayers, in the morning prayers, going into my little workshop, the smell, the joy, the feel, the touch, the looking at the tools, all those things. And then I don't work the 10 or 12 hours now that you probably still do, but I tend to finish 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and to be able to go back and sit in the chair and relax after the day. And it's been a good day. It's contemplative. And I have a wife who's very busy and Christine likes to do lots of things. But I like to just sit on the evening and think about what's happened during the day, listen to some music. And Life's a joy. Even being bipolar, I wouldn't swap it. I wouldn't go back and do it again. The ups are fantastic and sometimes difficult, and the downs are pretty hard to cope with. But overall, it's been a brilliant life.
Well, you've been enjoying my own life, and we've travelled a lot together.
We have,
We've gone through thick and thin.
On scooters in Greece.
Some of them, sometimes they didn't start. But,
you with your rass on, and
that's right, yeah.
things flowing behind you.
Yeah, and I'm walking through Athos. And,
Yeah, we had some great, and we did that lovely walk where we could hear the cicadas.
That's right, yeah.
On Evia, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And that walk from Great Lavra Monastery to Veron, and the fathers didn't believe we'd walked so far so quickly.
Well, we went on the boat, didn't we? And I got seasick. And I said to Father John, I'm not going back on the boat. I'm going to walk. And you said, we can't walk it, it's too far. But we got back in time for some food.
Yeah, Father John thought it was a miracle. He didn't believe us. He thought you must have picked up a car somewhere.
No, we walked it. But we're both fast walkers in those days. So.
Well, my dear friend, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Aidan.
So thank you for being with us, and look forward to sharing with you the next podcast. Bye.
Bye-bye.